Yeah.
We can do a sexually charged embrace.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to Call Time, a theater pod. My name is Marisa Helene Mast, and this is the space where we get to talk about it all because every role in theater matters. And this is also the space where we learn, laugh, and sometimes call out the chaos. So sign in on the sheet because it's call time. Okay, so today's guest is a wonderful person who has a job that I have always been interested in, but really don't know a lot about. So I am happy to introduce the lovely Chandy Bennett.
Hey!
How are ya?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. How are you doing?
I am doing grand. Thank you for asking. Thanks so much for being here today.
Of course.
Let's take a look at what's going to be happening on today's show, shall we?
My director went, there's so much I can do with this, but we definitely need an intimacy director. And I went, what's that?
And like there's the pressure to have the kids kiss. That's a really weird sentence.
You landed in the middle of your favorite children's book, but you're on acid.
Wasn't that great?
Wonderful.
Oh my gosh.
Amazing.
Oh my god. Award winning. One day. Well, awesome. All right. So to start off, as I do with every guest I have now, I have a question for you.
Shoot.
In my heart of hearts, I truly believe that there is good theater cringe and bad theater cringe. And I would love to know what you define as each and what you would categorize, where things fall for you there.
Okay. Yes, I have an answer for this.
All right, I'm ready.
Where do you want to start with, good or bad?
Oh, your choice. I'm ready. I'm just...
Either it's all about the intention of the cringe. Is it meant to be cringy, right?
Ooh, yeah.
So good theater cringe is something like Maureen in Rent, Over the Moon, where you're like, I have no idea what's happening. Why is this happening? Is this what performance art is like?
Cut to middle school Marissa doing exactly that in the middle of the cafeteria. So, yeah.
Performance artist myself. I'm like, yeah, I know. Yeah, sometimes I'm trying to push your boundaries. Okay.
Yeah.
So then bad theater cringe is the accidents. It's the Peter Pan when they're trying to
oh my god.
fly and they fly into set pieces and stuff, and you're like, no, I'm scared for your safety. But also how embarrassing.
Especially because it's like Peter Pan too. Like, of all the shows to have that kind of accident, it's like so wholesome in that way. And it's just, oh, the magic is
I don't
gone.
want to laugh. I just want to. Are you okay?
It's a little schadenfreude, like. Oh my god. Well, those are excellent examples of good and bad theater cringe. If y'all have any examples like your good theater cringe and bad theater cringe, please post it in the comments below because I live for them. Because I am the definition of good theater cringe, in my opinion. At least I made it my opinion when I've been told this so many times. So let us know. So getting into our topic today, we are going to be talking about the very fascinating and very much hot topic trending job known as intimacy direction. Ooh, some would say scandalous, some would say, So, I'm sure that a lot of you out there are like, I think I know what an intimacy director is because I know the word intimacy, which usually means, sexual, and direction is a direction, so it's sexual direction, which is probably was a band in the 80s as well. But point being, the general knowledge, at least my own general knowledge when I went into this, thinking about what is an intimacy director, it's mostly just like, okay, you're coordinating sex scenes, and that's really it. But obviously we're going to get into how much more it actually is. But I'm sure you've heard this as well now that you're in training for this, that a lot of people have something to say about this role and whether or not it's necessary, especially in TV film. Theater, it's its own thing of learning that, but TV film, they're very opinionated. And so there is an article that I found through Vulture about a lot of pushback from certain actors about intimacy coordinators. There is one in particular, I have a quote here from Ellen Pompano, who says, I mean, intimacy coordinators create a whole other slew of problems, but the intention behind it is good. But the execution is sometimes weird, because how do you train to be an intimacy coordinator? So I want to know how you feel about a quote like that from someone who obviously has created such wonderful projects that have very intimate moments in them. Do you think that the quote itself is meant with, no animosity, but just kind of like a little snippy, or what?
It probably came out of a personal experience. There is a certain level of training that you do need. It takes a lot of practice to be able to work with a lot of different personalities, a lot of different situations, depending on who they got. There is a good intimacy professional for each type of project. Not every person is meant for the same project, but it's so new. It's about going through and figuring out, an intimacy director or coordinator that was really good for this project might not work for this one, like you would do with a director, like you would do with an actor. It's all about personalities too, and what the work is and what you specialize in.
And I think a lot of people, because there was such a sudden influx of people hiring intimacy directors, it can be a bit of a culture shock. And I think that a lot of people, because there are some other people in this article who had pushback, like, Gwyneth Paltrow was like, what do you mean there's an intimacy coordinator? It feels so mechanical and like not natural. And Jennifer Aniston was even like, this is just, we're actors. This is what we do. We don't need a coordinator. And while I understand that mindset, I think some people don't realize how beneficial it can be just for ease of mind to have someone else that isn't the regular director helping you through a scene, to make it more powerful or to make it, more realistic. And I know that a lot of their concerns came out of the Me Too movement, which of course, creates a whole other thing about power dynamics in intimate settings, which is another reason why having an intimacy coordinator, director, professional is a really wonderful, accessible thing to have. But we are very lucky that not everyone in Hollywood hates this, because there have been I have some wonderful quotes here by some top actors who I would love to share with you. Kate Winslet, who has, we've seen her in many, many situations. She says, I would have benefited from an intimacy coordinator every single time I had to do a love scene or be partially naked or even a kissing scene. It would have been nice to have someone in my corner because I had to stand up for myself. Again, it's just nice to have that extra support, even if it's for a small moment, you know. There's also, we have a quote here from Emma Stone, who says, having their coordinator there felt like having both a safety net and a choreographer and a handhold. They would text after they would wrap for the day, and they would talk about how they were feeling and what's going on, and it created this beautiful bonded relationship that you can't really say you have in other scenarios. You know, it's another person that's part of your family there. You know, your production team, your family. I love that. Jonathan Bailey said that they have a really wonderful intimacy coordinator on Bridgerton, which, I mean, when you think of intimacy, you think of Bridgerton these days. The cast especially has been high praise of this person, but Jonathan has been very vocal in saying, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. No one feels awkward. We're able to just kind of focus more on the work, which I think a lot of people forget that that's actually the point. Is like, this isn't just to have a distraction of somebody else. You're there to help someone get you to do your job. I don't know how you feel about any of all that positive praise as well.
We actually used Bridgerton as a scene study.
Awesome.
My courses.
What did you study?
So it was looking at the flow of a scene through that lens, like an intimate scene, and the choices that were made. And going through what the power dynamics were and how it was staged, the pacing, like all the different breakdowns of the choreography of it.
Oh, that's cool. Do you do that for every show you watch now?
Yeah.
You break it. Yeah. Can't help it.
I can't help it. I can't help it.
Now, can you tell if they have a professional?
That's not as easy to tell. Because sometimes there have been times where I was like, oh, they definitely had one. Like, I would have put money down that Honora would have an intimacy coordinator because of the content, and then they didn't.
Yeah, I was about to say, that was so shocking.
It was shocking to me, too. And then on the flip side, there was something that I watched where it was only an intimate scene, not necessarily, it wasn't kissing, in a movie that did have one, which was, as soon as I saw it, like in the credits, I was like, oh, they worked with these two actors to create this intimate moment from their own experiences, I think.
Oh. It's so interesting to see how this dynamic has just kind of grown and like people's perception of it overall. And do you think that the pushback will subside as people tend to just normalize using it? Yes.
As far as calling into question what the role is, or why it exists, or if it helps. But I think it would go the same way as, like, when somebody is like, I want to do my own stunts. You don't need a stunt coordinator. I'm looking at you, Tom Cruise.
I was about to be like, Tom.
So, like, I think those moments will still exist, but overarchingly, it's like, yes, you should probably get a stunt coordinator if you want to, you know, jump a motorcycle over an 18-wheeler, you know?
Yeah. Now, do that while you're making out with someone. Then...
We need a stunt and an intimacy coordinator. Tag team!
Let's go! Oh my gosh. You know what? Now I want to see that. I want to see that production meeting. I want to hear how that would go. I would be like, all right, how are we going to plan this realistically? Here's the secret. There's a lot of wires. Now, this is the part of the show where we would normally have an ad read, but I don't have those yet, so we're just going to sit here and stare at the camera. And we are back. Welcome back to Chandy Bennett, who is an intimacy director, professional. You know, I say all these words, and I realize I should have asked the question from the very beginning. What exactly is an intimacy director / professional?
So, an intimacy professional. They're a choreographer for scenes of what everybody knows is simulated sex, right? But also for nudity, hyperexposure, which is something very specific. It's not necessarily that you're nude, but any part of an actor where they feel like they'd be exposed, showing. Like sometimes your back, for some people it's their hair. There's also cultural significance in that.
Yeah.
And then it's scenes of like intimacy or hypersexualized relationship moments. So it's not necessarily just the things we know as intimacy, but those moments where you can tell there's physical contact and tension. That's also a place for someone to assist you. And an intimacy professional can also be an advocate for actors, should be, and also a liaison between actors and production. Because there are so many roles that go into making a production. So when it comes to this specific element, you have one brain that can make this part of the production run.
I'll tell everyone out there now, I am learning so much right now, and I'm excited because I wouldn't have known all of this. This is really, really cool. So how did you choose to become one? Like, how did you know you were going to train for this and that whole process?
So back in like 2017, 2018, I wrote a show about intimate partner violence, and my director, who I brought it to, when there was a lot. There was a lot in the script of every varying degree of a relationship as far as physical connection. So my director went, there's so much I can do with this, but we definitely need an intimacy director. And I went, what's that? And when it was explained to me, I went, that's a job? I want to do that.
That's awesome. Okay, cool.
And then I met, and this is for any of my intimacy professionals out there, I was lucky enough to get Claire Warden, who is one of the premier stage intimacy directors now. Like, shows that she has worked on Broadway, have won Tonys.
You're training for both theater and screen, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Cool. And so with all of that, and since we talked about this earlier, I know you said, you didn't know this was a job, but like, were you in the same mindset as the general public, I would say, when it came to like thinking you knew what an intimacy director kind of was? Or did you, or because you had that conversation, it was more like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. I came with a very specific context of a very specific script. So when there is somebody that could just focus on these elements so that the other elements could be handled by the director, that's great. But it is still about choice. It's about actors' choices. If an actor doesn't want to have one, they could go, you don't need to work with me, it's fine. But there's always a partner in it.
Yeah.
It's about having the ability to have somebody to lean on.
So that all being said, like, are there, because obviously there are, almost every form of media we consume has a partner of some kind. So what do you find are there any differences you see in your training as you learn intimacy for stage versus screen?
So it's, for any of my dual folks who work in both stage and screen, you know that the processes for either one of those, they are so different. Like, film, it's go, go, go. You have one day. We're going to do this in 6 hours. You go to another room, figure it out, and then we're getting back on set. Let's go. Whereas theater, you sit with one script for a long time. You work through it. You have a long rehearsal process, and then you're in it for a few nights, right? Every week, or you're in it for a long time, there's breathing room, there's space, right? So there are tricks that go with either thing. Especially with how it's being presented.
Right.
Because in theater, you can't go, you can edit it in post, you know?
Sometimes we wish. Sometimes we wish.
We wish, but yeah. But film, it's rigorous days, right? So but there's so much you're able to experiment or, like, edit out if you need to. But there are still tricks that come with knowing certain camera angles, right? Knowing who to be able to speak to for what thing on set, as opposed to theater where it's like, I'm gonna prepare you as best I can, and then you go on stage, fly.
Yeah. Just, and then you're watching them and you go, oh, we should talk about that again. Because I'm sure that's a huge part of it, is communication overall.
Oh, yeah, it is the main part of it.
Because I assume you can't really do a lot of guessing here, because then that just creates tension and weird moments. While you're in training, is there anything that surprised you while you're learning about this field or about the role in general?
Surprise is a strong word, but something that I was like, oh, I do have to sort of reframe how I think about this, is there's a lot of stuff that can come up when working on intimacy work, and it's how much hand-holding there is to do and working through as a practitioner, comfort levels, and trying to remember, like, also, you're not a therapist.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Okay.
That was the one for me, where I was like, yeah, you're at work, so you're not, like, trying to work your best friend through something, but
right.
things are gonna come up sometimes, depending on what you're working on, right?
Yeah, so I'm assuming you would have to, like, of course, like any role, you'd have to set boundaries, but with something so personal, I'm sure that there's some gray area that needs to be talked out as well.
And how to handle that in a room, you know? And so much is, like, guiding us through just knowing, like, you have it, because you're going to be working with a lot of different personalities, always, you know?
Always.
So one answer might not always be the right answer. So the only thing for one person might not be the right answer for somebody else. So what you have to come back to is your own.
Okay. That's
your own boundaries. Like, how much am I willing to hold somebody's hand through this? You know?
Huh. That's a journey in itself. Wow. We're getting deep here, ladies and gentlemen, and ladies and gentlethems. Oh my goodness. Crazy. I'm just genuinely fascinated. Like, I'm just like, yes, tell me more. So with all of this, do you think, since you obviously have, I hate to use the word power here, because that's not really what we're talking about here, but you have authority. And with something so specific and special and necessary most of the time, do you hope that this job will be considered just as high up and important as, let's say, a director or a producer or like a regular dance choreographer? I feel like because it's a newer thing and people are still learning about it, there's a respect that needs to be learned.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say, it depends on your project, right? Like, it doesn't call for it. So there's already a level where it doesn't bring you to director status or producer status, because for anything to happen, you need those two things. But something like a choreographer, like a dance choreographer, some things need it, some things don't. And that's probably about the level. I will say, and I can call it now, and it's also rooted in the history of intimacy direction, is fight coordinators and fight directors are an inspiration for where intimacy directors and coordinators fall in production.
Oh, okay. How long have you been in training? I wanted to ask.
So, about 4 months, 5 months, but I was introduced to it as a concept years ago, and then last year I started getting calls for it. Friends who knew that I had background with it, like actual experience with an intimacy director, that had shows that they were working on that they were like, yeah, we should probably have one for this. Who do we know? And my course load, and anytime you're training in this field, they encourage doing work, knowing what projects you can take on.
Okay.
At a certain level, they do sort of prepare you for that. But there's something to being in practice with it. And both of the projects that I took on were shows we all know and love. One was Grease, one was Rent. I'm very used to all the content in these. I think we're all right.
I think we're all okay there. But that's so interesting to think about these shows just kind of, we're giving it the old college try before intimacy coordinators are trying to understand how to make this comfortable for our actors, but also not taking away, like diluting it to the point where it looks really awkward. And like there's the are you a fan of Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
I am a huge fan of Always.
I figured as much, but I wanted to ask. It's the Nightman Cometh episode where Dee and Dennis end up having to play opposite each other, and they're like, "I'm not going to make out with my sister," and Artemis is like, "What if it's just a sexually charged embrace?" Like, is this the language that you use as an intimacy director?
Artemis was the intimacy director in that scene, okay? Problem solving, Keeping boundaries,
God.
Respecting the boundaries.
Oh my god. So let's say, for example, that let's do Rent, okay? Is there certain language and vocabulary that you would have to use during stuff like this? Or is it just mostly like, hey, how about instead of grabbing your crotch, you do this instead? Is it more like giving options or just changing vocabulary?
So there is an element of desexualizing language. Like, as... desexualized as possible, in the way of like, we're here, these are body parts. So, for some of the body parts, it's more about the area, like the front of your pelvis, but
right.
Generally speaking, in theater, especially, there's so much that where you don't actually have to touch the physical body part to get the point across.
No.
That works really well. But yeah, so it's very like, tailbone or, upper thigh.
Right.
Your glute,
Yeah.
if you gotta.
Fair enough.
But it's all about delivery, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's totally and completely fair. If I could go back in time and unhear certain directors tell me to move certain body parts and say it felt so crude in a way, I'm just like, now I really don't want to move it, but I guess I'm gonna have to. And it's just about, we're not, I assume, I say we as if I'm an intimacy director. I'm saying I assume it's like, we're not going to make it so we don't acknowledge what these parts are. We're just trying to make it less awkward to be like, hey, can you move your hip slightly to the left so that it looks like you have more contact? Like something like that, right?
Exactly that.
Yeah. So that being said, from what you've been learning so far, how are things prevented and how is the illusion made more realistic in that way, whether it be a simulated sex scene or, you know, just touching, nudity. How have you learned to kind of make that magic happen?
It's hard to sort of, I'm trying to think of good examples of it. I've been lucky enough to work with actors who are down, you know? Even when I'm encouraging them, like, you don't have to be down. Like, your job's not on the line.
Yeah.
We can do a sexually charged embrace.
Yeah.
That, and everything I've worked on so far has been on stage and kissing. Right? Though, for Grease, the Rizzo and Kaneki had to do a whole makeout session behind the scene in the park. So there was a lot of faking it based on like where you're putting your face, how you're staged, right? If you put your arm up on something in a tree, you could just be staring at each other like this the whole time and be like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah. That's true. That is very, very true. So this would go, because I always think of, this is going to sound really weird, I always think of with high school theater, and like there's the pressure to have the kids kiss. That's a really weird sentence. I might change that. To have the students kiss on stage. Because, you know, it's like, well, it's acting. You're actors. This is what we do. You have to do it. And then, like, I have a very vivid memory of someone I went to high school with who had never kissed anybody before, and they were a romantic lead, and the person playing opposite them was like, listen, it's so easy. Here, I'll do it. I'll kiss you right now. And he's like, whoa, hold on. No, that's not what I was saying. Let's figure this out. And they like, but then I felt really bad because like the director was kind of giving them a hard time about like making this a big deal. I think that's something as well. It's just a mindset of like, it's not that we're making this a big deal. We're trying to make it so it's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And
that your actors don't have to be uncomfortable.
Right.
They don't have to be.
No.
There is no reason for them to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You just need someone who is good at creative problem solving.
Yeah, and I think that's also a reason why it's nice to have an intimacy, you know, director along with a director, because then that means the director doesn't have to focus on that as much, and they don't have to set time aside to be like, oh, we're going to be behind in rehearsal now. No, I'm going to let them handle it because that's their job.
Yeah. It takes some pressure off of it, just like you don't expect every director in the world to also be a choreographer.
When are you done your training?
So, the blessing of this program is it's go at your own pace. So a lot of it is web-based, there's modules, that kind of thing. But with periodic like workshops and check-ins in person, because that's where the real work is, you know? So I think they do check-ins every month, but I just quit my day job.
Oh.
I did.
Okay. We're making moves.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I am aiming to be done with the program the end of the summer.
Okay. And then onward and upward from there, working full-time?
Hope, you know, fingers crossed, freelance work, but making it happen.
This is the space where we manifest our dreams. Okay. This is the space where we do that, because that is what we are about as arts industry people. We want to see each other succeed. I am so excited for you. That's amazing.
Thank you.
All right, so you're hearing it, you're watching it. Hire her. Hire her.
Hire me.
Yeah.
Chandy Bennett. Chandy, like a chandelier. That's how you remember.
Yes, I love that. So now it's that point It's everyone's favorite time of the podcast. I don't think that's true, but if it is, let me know. I appreciate it. And we're doing the Green Room Games. I'm going to figure out a theme song. Anyway, so to take a break from all of this, we're going to play a quick game, and the game we have chosen today is Playbill Roulette. Woohoo! And so this game today is where I have a spinner. I'm going to spin that spinner. It is loaded with a bunch of shows, okay? And you, Chandy, are going to explain the plot to me badly under a minute.
Okay.
Do you think you can do that?
I think so.
All right. I have confidence in sunshine, I have confidence in rain, and I have confidence in you. So let's go ahead and spin the spinner. Do 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 do, royalty free. Do 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 do, royalty free. This show is Seussical.
Just imagine for a moment that you landed in the middle of your favorite children's book, but you're on acid.
Yeah. That is Seussical. That is Seussical the musical. Oh my god, yop! Love that. Okay, let's do one more. Do 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 do, royalty free. Do 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 do, royalty free.
Terrible theater person.
You're fine. Okay, here we go. Ready? Annie.
These adults are just really, really mean to this kid. Just, like, so mean. But then also, like, this older dude just obsessed with this kid. And then, like, just takes her to a mansion. And then she lives the best life ever. So, like...
Simple. AKA, adults are awful.
Adults are awful.
And the depression was awful. Anyway, thank you so much for playing the Green Room Games. Royalty free. All right, so now we are at the point where we are going to have our talk back, which is where all of you have sent us questions based on the talk back question that I post here on our Instagram. So feel free to give us a follow so you can participate too. Thank you so much for everybody that has sent in their questions. Really appreciate it. Also, feel free to ask your questions below. We love this kind of engagement. Please, we want to hear you. So the question I asked was if anybody actually just genuinely had any questions for an intimacy director. And so our first one is from Kenny, who asks, how do you handle an actor who is uncomfortable with a certain movement?
I mean, that's the basis, really, of the job, you know? You go, okay, cool. Instead of this, how about this? Because in our brain space, we all know, the intimacy director and the actors and the director all know where the scene needs to get to. Whatever move it is that we're incorporating, we know where what it's supposed to mean and what it's supposed to do, where it's supposed to bring our characters. So it's looking at that, going, okay, this is the move that was thought of, but there is always something else that will get us to the same place. Mm-hmm. So we go, okay, not that one. How about this? Sometimes it's figuring out those boundaries first before we even start building. Sometimes you're coming into it late in the game, and you go, we all know where this is going. We've got some things figured out, some limitations based on sets, costumes, this, that. So these are our limitations. These are all the things that are open. Let's build.
Okay, and so with that, is there a point where you... I don't want to be like, do you have a limit to how much you're willing to compromise? Because I know that there are people that are just going to be so picky or so stubborn.
The role that makes the compromises. There is nothing that needs to be precious for me in this role. We're coming in to make sure the things that are precious to everybody else are respected and understood. So if something is precious to a director, but you have an actor that is not comfortable with it, or there's just one element, it's also whittling it down and going, is it the whole thing, or is it just this element of it, to be able to create the compromise for everybody. We're the liaison, we're the negotiator. There shouldn't be anything precious as an intimacy director. You can come in having a vision for what the scene's gonna be.
Yeah, that's very, very fair. Our next question is from Alec, who says, what is a stunt people would be surprised that you coordinate?
I mean, the amount of things that human existence creates as a sexual experience, you can take and then also have to figure out a way to do it.
Yeah, because there are so many things that people want to, can come up with, for sure.
Huh?
In fact, it's almost as if there are complete websites dedicated to such things.
So, take a stroll down there, figure out the weirdest, and bring it on to me. Let's...
So I'm assuming then there's an element of, just kind of being fearless in this, and being like, all right, yeah, you know what? It's only awkward if you make it awkward, but the whole point is to not make it awkward, so...
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, that's a personal tenet, even for myself, but in art and everything, it's only awkward if you make it awkward, if you want it to be awkward, because that's also an experience of something you might want to portray. In the working experience, it doesn't have to be. We're here doing a job.
Yeah.
The actors' experience and directors, everybody that works in entertainment in some capacity, has come across a project that you're like, this is the strangest thing I've ever worked on.
You know what? Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. Awesome. Well, those are the questions that we had sent to us. Thank you both to Kenny and Alec for sending in your questions. If we get any more, I'll make sure to send them on to Chandy. That way you can get your answers from a professional. And Chandy, this is so fascinating, and I'm really looking forward to you finishing your training and learning so much more. And I want you to have your moment right now where you can take a second, promote something that you would love to share with the world. All yours.
I am, just ready to dive in, start working. If you need a coordinator for film or television, you want an intimacy director for your theater season, check me out on Instagram, Chandy Bennett. It's just my name.
Beautiful. Amazing. Sensational. Awesome. Well, you know what? I can't believe we're already at this point, but we're wrapping up here at Call Time at Theatrepod. Wild. Chandy, thank you so much for being here. You are a wonderful person. I'm excited to see what's coming up for you. And this has been Call Time at Theatrepod. My name is Marisa Helene Mast. You're the audience. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye.